The room was dimly lit, just a single bedside lamp casting soft shadows across the walls. I sat there, staring at my own reflection in the mirror, tracing the outline of my lips with trembling fingers. How did I get here? How did I become this woman, the kind of woman I had always sworn I'd never be? If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you I was happily married. My husband, Daniel, was everything a woman could ask for. Kind, responsible, devoted. We had a love story straight out of a fairy tale, at least on the surface. I had taken vows, made promises. To him, to myself, to the life we built together. And yet, here I was, about to confess the one thing I never thought I would do. You see, I always believed that fantasies were just that. Harmless daydreams, thrilling yet unattainable thoughts that played in the back of my mind. They were never supposed to become reality. But one day, they did. If you've ever thought some fantasies should stay just that, fantasies, keep listening, because I thought so too. Until I didn't. Like and subscribe, and let me take you into my world. It started with something so small, so insignificant, that I barely even noticed it happening. A glance, a lingering smile, the brush of fingertips where they shouldn't have been. Harmless, right? Or at least, that's what I told myself. Daniel and I had settled into routine. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch a show, fall asleep. It was safe, predictable, maybe too predictable. I loved him, I still do. But love is not always enough to silence the hunger for something more. That hunger first surfaced in the most unexpected place, at a dinner party hosted by our mutual friends. The laughter was flowing as easily as the wine, and the room was filled with warm, familiar faces. And then there was him. Jason. I had met him before, but that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the way his eyes lingered on mine a second too long. Maybe it was the way he leaned in when he spoke to me, his voice a low murmur against the noise of the party. Maybe it was the way I felt when he was near, alive, excited, desired. I wasn't blind. I knew when a man was attracted to me. But the difference that night? I didn't just notice. I liked it. It started so subtly that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. The way he'd find reasons to stand next to me. The way our hands would graze when reaching for the same dish. The way he whispered something in my ear, making me laugh, while Daniel was only a few feet away. I should have shut it down. I should have stepped away. But I didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was more than just Daniel's wife. I felt like a woman again. Desired. Wanted. That night, lying next to my husband in bed, I replayed every moment in my mind. The way Jason's gaze burned into me, the unspoken words between us. My heart pounded in my chest, and I hated myself for how much I loved the feeling. I told myself it was nothing. A moment of excitement, a passing thrill. But deep down, I knew better. Because fantasies, those dangerous, thrilling, forbidden fantasies, they have a way of creeping into reality when you least expect it. And this was only the beginning. I told myself it was just an innocent attraction. That as long as I kept my distance, nothing would ever happen. I was wrong. Days passed, and thoughts of Jason crept into my mind at unexpected moments, while brushing my hair in the morning, while folding laundry, while lying next to Daniel at night. My body might have been in my marriage, but my mind was elsewhere. It started small. A text. A joke. A little inside conversation that wasn't meant to mean anything. But little things build into bigger things, and soon, I was seeking him out at every gathering. I caught myself dressing differently, hoping he would notice. I laughed a little too long at his jokes, held his gaze a little too firmly. And Jason? He noticed. He always noticed. It didn't take long for that first real step, the one I swore I wouldn't take. One evening, after another gathering, Jason walked me to my car while Daniel stayed inside chatting with friends. It was innocent. It was friendly. Until it wasn't. "Trisha," he murmured, his voice softer than I had ever heard it before. "I think about you more than I should." My breath caught in my throat. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I should have stopped it then and there. I should have walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. "You shouldn't," I whispered back. But the way I looked at him betrayed me. His fingers brushed against my wrist, and my skin burned where he touched me. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. That moment stretched between us, thick with tension, with unspoken promises. It would have been so easy to lean in, to close the distance. Jason reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. My eyes fluttered shut for just a second, savoring the feel of his fingers against my skin. Then, suddenly, a voice from the house. Daniel's voice, calling my name. Reality slammed back into me like ice water. I jerked away, inhaling sharply, my face flushed. Jason took a step back, running a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. "We shouldn't," I whispered, though I barely believed it myself. Jason nodded, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body burning with something I hadn't felt in years. The fire had been lit, and deep down I knew I wouldn't be able to put it out. The moment of no return wasn't planned. It never is. One text, one invitation. That was all it took. I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone vibrated. Jason's name flashed on the screen. "Meet me tonight." No excuses, no long explanations, just 3 simple words. And I knew exactly what they meant. I should have deleted the message. I should have ignored it. But instead, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I typed my response. "Where?" I knew, in that moment, there was no going back. There's a moment after you cross the line when everything feels surreal. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down at the waves crashing against the rocks, knowing you've already jumped. And there's no undoing it. That night, Jason and I met in a small, dimly lit hotel room on the other side of town. A place where no one would recognize us. The air was thick with unspoken words, and my heart pounded against my ribs as I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing my fate. I don't know how long we stood there, just looking at each other, breathing the same charged air. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, built it up in my mind as something that would be intoxicating and exhilarating, and it was. But it was also something else, terrifying. The first touch sent a jolt through me, an undeniable shock of desire and fear. Hands traced skin, lips met in frantic desperation. It was hunger, pure and simple, a need that had been starved for too long. I wanted to get lost in it, to forget the weight of my choices, but no matter how much pleasure I felt, guilt lurked just beneath the surface. When it was over, we lay in silence, side by side, staring at the ceiling. My body hummed with the remnants of what we had done, but my mind was already racing ahead. What now? What had I done? Jason reached over, trailing a lazy hand down my arm. "Are you okay?" I swallowed hard, nodding. Yeah, but I wasn't. For days afterward, I lived in a fog, floating through my life like a ghost. Daniel kissed me, and I kissed him back, but I felt like I was watching someone else's life play out. Every mundane moment, cooking dinner, folding laundry, lying beside him at night, was tainted by the knowledge of what I had done. I wanted to believe it had been a mistake, a one-time thing. But the truth? The truth was that I didn't want to stop. Jason and I started meeting regularly, finding stolen moments in places that felt safe, hidden. I told myself I could balance it, that I could be both, the devoted wife and the reckless lover. But secrets have a way of demanding to be known, and mine was no exception. One evening, Daniel came home earlier than expected. I was in the bathroom when I heard his voice, sharp, strained. My heart stopped. I stepped out, towel wrapped around me, and found him holding my phone in his hands, screen glowing with a message from Jason. "Can't wait to see you again." The silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel's face was unreadable, but his hands trembled as he set the phone down. "Trisha," he said quietly. "Who is Jason?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because what could I say? That it was nothing? That it meant everything? Tears burned my eyes, and in that moment, I knew there was no escaping this. I had shattered something sacred, and no matter how many apologies I could muster, nothing would ever put the pieces back together the same way. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't rage. He just looked at me, eyes filled with something worse than anger. Disappointment. "I thought we were happy," he whispered. I did too. But happiness and contentment aren't the same, and sometimes we mistake one for the other until it's too late. There's no neat ending to a story like this, no perfect resolution. Daniel and I tried to fix things, but trust is fragile once it's been broken. I lost him. I lost Jason, too. What felt like passion in the shadows crumbled under the weight of reality. The thrill died, and all that remained was the wreckage of my choices. Somewhere along the way, I thought I was searching for something: excitement, validation, passion. But in the end, all I found was emptiness. If you're listening to this, maybe you're judging me. Maybe you think you would never do what I did. And I hope you never do. Because I swore it was just a fantasy, until I actually did it. And now, I have to live with the truth.